As the deep state agenda moves forward with the use of riots and street violence, there's a side to this story the mainstream media is completely ignoring. It is the dividing of families over the issue. Have you heard of families being split because of the recent movement by Antifa and Black Lives Matter and other Marxist organizations? More than likely you haven't, but we have. When parents and grandparents have tried to talk some sense into their young family, they've been met by either disagreement or even the threat of violence. Yes, we have even heard of threats of beating up parents and grandparents over the issue. These parents have come to the realization that they really don't know their own children. They haven't been paying attention to what their children have been being taught. It is also obvious that the parents have not been engaging their children in political discussions in the home. If they had been, they would have realized that their children have been either educated into believing or influenced into believing something different than their ideas. The basic ideas and principles on which this country were founded are absent from the minds and hearts of too many people as a result of either very poor education or deliberate Marxist education in the government schools. Now, I've had a lot of experience as a young man going into schools at the invitation of teachers and students, trying to get someone to discuss, debate, or teach Americanism to the students. Sometimes I've been invited in to provide the so-called balance to political debate. I remember on one occasion I was called on to debate 8 other people on a panel with Black Panthers, Students for a Democratic Society, ACLU, Young People's Socialist League, etc. I decided rather than to debate, to show the students, there were around 2,000 of them, the similarities of the Hitler Youth and the then current Marxist youth organizations. It almost started a riot. Many students were hungry for the truth and hated what their teachers were doing to organize them into leftist cadres for the streets. The Marxists lost control of the situation and afterwards surrounded me so that the students couldn't come close to me to talk. They also prevented me from traveling around to the classroom to continue the conversation as I was supposed to do. The leftists on the panels were allowed to do so, however. This was at a very prestigious high school in a very affluent area. At a different high school in the same city, I was asked to come in and speak to a smaller group of students. It was held in the study hall. Around the top edge of the walls were pictures and portraits of Marxists. In the corner was a table full of literature from the SDS, the Students for Democratic Society, a communist-run entity. There was no patriotic literature in the room. The place looked more like a communist bookstore. The study hall used to be on the ground floor of the school, but it was moved up to the 4th floor to keep parents from noticing that their children were being indoctrinated and complaining about it. They had to walk by the room to get to the school's office, so it was noticeable. So they moved it so the parents wouldn't see it. One of the history classrooms was teaching the other side of the Vietnam War, with the Viet Cong flag and pictures of Mao Zedong and Ho Chi Minh. This was in the late 1960s, 50 years ago. This school has produced left-leaning students for 50 years. The city? Seattle, Washington. These were the schools in the better areas of the city. In the areas that had more ethnic diversity, they were teaching racial hatred. One of these schools is just a few blocks from the so-called CHOP area you hear about in the news. The things happening in Seattle are no shock to me because I've witnessed what the schools have been teaching there for years. It was only a matter of time before we'd see the situation bubble up in that town. Actually, the communists have had a great deal of influence there for many decades. The result is the news you see today. They may be destroying statues of American heroes, but the statue of Lenin, the communist dictator, in Seattle, it still stands. It not only stands, but has flowers placed at his feet. Let me tell you a couple of other stories to give you even more of a perspective of the influence that has existed in that city for decades. The nickname, the Soviet of Washington, came about due to Postmaster James Farley under President Roosevelt, talking about the Washington State Legislature. It used to have the highest percentage of communists elected to office of any state legislature in the country. He referred to the, quote, 47 states and the Soviet of Washington, unquote. This is when we had 48 states. Since that time, others have used the phrase to describe their states as well. I monitored the first anti-Vietnam War demonstration in Seattle. The leaflet said it was sponsored by the May 2nd movement, actually a number of Marxist organizations. They marched up and down the sidewalk in front of the federal office building near the downtown library. They really didn't have to go very far to demonstrate. They simply came out of the federal building because most of the demonstrators were federal employees. I briefly spoke to one of them who was the editor of the Federal Employees Union newspaper. She was a member of the Socialist Workers' Party, the Trotskyite wing of the communist movement, an even more violent communist organization than the Stalin-centered communists. In Seattle, the federal government formed a motivated mothers club of single mothers on the government dole. These single mothers received money through the Federal War on Poverty initiative. The federal authorities hired 3 women to organize these mothers. They were all communists. They were provided with a list of women who were on the federal dole. Now follow me here. They were given a list of these single mothers on the dole, and they were organized to use federally funded lawyers through legal services to petition the federal government in federal court against other federal lawyers for more federal money. Every step of the way involved federal employees or money. The media made it look as if they were simply independent women who wanted a better life. It was literally a Punch and Judy show. It's amazing what you can learn by simply keeping your eyes open. The communists have always been very strong in the city of Seattle. The average citizen doesn't see it unless they're very involved. Until recently. Now people are noticing it. The whole country is noticing it. The parents have not seen it either because unless they're very involved. The young are being used to create the illusion of revolution and chaos. So what's the remedy? For one, get more active in educating your own children. Our active initiative this week is to advise you to pay more attention to what your children are being taught. Not only in government schools, but private schools as well. Not all private schools teach the necessary understanding of our great American system. This means you are going to have to learn these principles yourself. Start by using the Constitution is the Solution series on DVD. Have your children sit with you to watch them. Also, watching Overview of America DVD is a must. Ask questions of your children as to what they believe and why. You'd better know the answers yourself. Build an appreciation for Americanism and our country's founders in your children. The building blocks of civilization is the family. Start there. It all starts in the home. You can never take your children for granted. The subversive influences that surround them are greater than you think.